is October 14th, 1987, and this is Diane Ealand interviewing Colonel Albert F. Schoepper, and we're going to be talking about Taylor Branson this afternoon.
Right, I'm Colonel Albert F. Schoepper, retired director of the U.S. Marine Band. I first met Captain Branson when I came down to Washington in the last week in February 1934. And I arrived at the Marine Barracks rather early in the morning. The first two members of the band were coming in to warm up. In fact, the captain had not arrived as yet. I came down with my violin because that's all I played at the time. And I warmed up in the back of the band hall, and a few of the players came back and talked with me. I remember one of them being William F. Sandelman and the concert master of the orchestra. Then one of the older men took me upstairs to meet Captain Branson. I introduced myself and I told him where I come from in Rochester. He asked me what I played. I told him the violin. He said, "Well, my God, boy, this is a military band. What else do you play?" I said, "Well, this is all I do play is violin." And I told him I'd been a pupil of the School of Music and I'd been playing in Syracuse College Orchestra, University Orchestra. He said, "Well, wait around a bit and we'll convert to orchestra after intermission. We'll listen to you play." So they converted to orchestra. Meanwhile, I was pretty well warmed up by that time back in the hall. I recall that day particularly because during that week, Sir Edward Elgar had died, and Branson was working on Cockaigne Overture, preparing it for broadcast, to be broadcast later that afternoon. But then about halfway through the morning, they did change to orchestra. He asked me to come up and ask me what I wanted to play. Probably thinking I'd say, "Well, whatever you have in the library, like the Mendelssohn or something." I said, "I'll play the Pocket Mini Concerto." See, we've never had that down here before. We don't have those parts. I said, "Well, if you don't mind, I'll stand up and play alone," which I did. Branson sat down on the first cello stand, and I stood up and faced the orchestra and played up to the first tutti in the Pocket Mini Concerto. And then he said, "Son, I want to see you upstairs." From that time on, I was in. Took my physical down the street that same afternoon, I believe, yes, down the Navy Yard in those days. And went back home, gathered my things in from Rochester, and came back a week later and joined the Marine Band on March 7th. 1934. He gave me my choice of whatever band instrument I wanted to play. He said, "Pick something easy, like the saxophone, if you like," which I did. I didn't do any playing for about a month. I worked up in the library a little bit. But then I was booked as soloist. They rented the parts, accompanying parts, for the Pocket Mini Concerto from Tams in New York or Philadelphia, a rental agency at the time. And so I played the concerto in April. It was my first appearance. From that time on, I was a frequent soloist. I opened the fall season with another concerto and kept on going. I turned over all those programs. You may have seen them in the past. Okay, so that's the story of my solo career. And then rather early on, he put me in charge of small engagements. One of the first being General Pershing, the staff of the SS Baltic. Dinner held down in the Army-Navy Club. The SS Baltic was the first ship to carry American expeditionary forces to Europe during World War I. That was my first engagement. I would think probably the end of that, 34, I was taking charge of small things.
Having only been in that short time, what had you done to impress Captain Branson so that he picked you out of all the people in the band to do that?
Take charge of work?
Yes, sir.
Well, he knew I was an excellent violinist. Some of these little jobs were sort of a playing manager, you might say. I would stand up and play and had maybe 4 or 5 or 6 people playing with me. Pianos, cello, and so forth. So that's the reason, I suppose. I played well, and I wasn't catching a lot of band work either. I caught every string job that came along. I know I wore a red uniform to go to the White House, and a day or so after I joined the band, they picked one of the slimmer men in the band for me to borrow the coat from, because I weighed 140 pounds. And that's the story. Then after 1938, I was placed in charge of all the Commandant's House music, because William Sandelman, at that time he was assistant director, became assistant director in 1935. But he still he played in the orchestra, played in the band, and he took charge of a lot of small engagements too. played a lot of it. Yeah, but then, after he'd come back from the 1938 tour, I think there was a Commandant's House engagement, maybe a day or two after they'd arrived back, and Branson said, Schoepper, you always have fiddle fingers, take charge of that job over there with Jim Holton. And from that time on, I took charge of every one.
During those years, was Captain Branson playing any?
Oh, no. No,
He'd
Branson.
stopped.
Well, he'd stopped. I'm sure, way back at around 1927 when he became director of the band. But in those days, the assistant director had to play.
So that you never heard him play violin?
Never heard him play, no.
Did you ever talk to someone who had heard him play?
They said he was an excellent concertmaster, because a lot of his contemporaries were in the band. The band, of course, seemed like a collection of much older men to me, because I was 20 years old when he came here. And there were a lot of people who retired shortly after I joined, and they did 30-year band. Quite a few people stayed for 30 years. Now, the band was only about 65 men, as I recall, in 1935. Am I correct? You may have
So that's very close.
records, right? So, and we played everything. We played. I played every band concert that came along in the summertime. It's doubling, you know. Everybody had to double, unless you were an essential first chairman, trumpet or woodwind or something like that. So we caught our share of band and orchestra, funerals, parades, unpleasant Saturday morning inspections.
What did his contemporaries say about his solo playing on the violin?
I don't know if he ever played a solo. I never heard anyone say that he stood up and played a concerto. I know that Sandelman had done that several times, I was told. And I heard Sandelman play only once after I joined, that is, as a soloist, and then he was in conjunction with a string bass player, an old fellow named Franz Schum, I think was his name. Yes, Schum. And they played a duet for violin and double bass by Patazini.
And what did you think of his playing
Very good.
compared to the others?
Sandelman?
Yes, sir.
He was a first-class concertmaster, good soloist, very experienced orchestra man. Yes, we're most capable.
Okay. Did you feel like you learned anything from Captain Branson? Since he was a violin player, did he extend any knowledge to you from the podium to you as a playing member of the orchestra?
Not as a soloist, not as a performer, but I learned a great deal because he doesn't hesitate to perform major orchestral works. Therefore, I learned the repertoire. Our orchestral programs were quite heavy, as you noticed back in those days. They're all on record on file, I'm sure. Symphony almost every Wednesday night. We played on Wednesday nights. And they were heavy programs. So one did acquire orchestral experience in quite a hurry here. And of course, I was an avid learner in the band as well. The repertoire of the band was so different from what I'd experienced before. Of course, I thought a lot of it was trash, because lighter works. For broadcasts, summer concerts, we tended to play popular encores and things like that. But on the whole, the band's concert programs were quite impressive. That's where I learned a great deal of my own programming.
Well, if you did pick up on his programming, could you kind of explain to me what his programming philosophy was? Did you feel like that his programming was consistent, or was it by the job?
Well, it was consistent throughout the regular concert seasons of the band and of the orchestra. We didn't play too many lighter works during the orchestral season. As I say, there was always a soloist, and maybe we would play a selection of something, but generally the programs were based on the classics. Now, in the summertime, of course, we played quite a bit of lighter fare. What I particularly enjoyed about playing in the band back in those years were the radio broadcasts. We had one or two, at least one or two a week. The shut-in hour, then the fire and home hour once a month, and then we'd be on several networks. And by playing those programs, I felt that the band itself, the members of the band, acquired a great deal of versatility. Now, of course, we don't have broadcasts. They stopped many years ago. So there are very few smaller works being played anymore. Like within a half hour, you had to play some smaller works, maybe a major work. But you learn the band repertoire, the sight reading. Maybe one rehearsal, and you'd be on the air the next day. So that the programming was more versatile then. Now I notice the band repeats so many of the major works of the transcriptions and so forth. What can I say? Pines of Rome and pictures at an exhibition. There seemed to be a lot of heavy material. And in the summertime as well, we'd play many lighter encores, such as I wouldn't deign to program today, because they'd had their day after all. And on the radio, we played popular things too. I don't mean to say like dance music or anything like that, but tunes of the day, like The Eyes of Texas and Home on the Range, because after all, a great deal of the radio programs were request programs. So Branson did fulfill those requests, and some of them were quite light. I did find only one criticism of his concerts, band concerts, that would be. He played too many encores. He felt it was an obligation. As soon as one number ended, there's a little applause, would have to come an encore, and the men would have all these little books lying on the floor, the A book, the B book, the C book, and before the end of one number, the word would be passed around, 15 in the A book. When the guys were playing, they reached down and up would come the black books. As soon as the Branson would acknowledge one vowel, down would come the beat for the encore.
And this was the orchestra and the band?
No, mainly in the band concerts.
And the encores would have been marches?
Or some popular tunes. They had all kinds of little tunes in those black books, right?
Well, we have them. I'll look at them.
I think ridiculous for some of them in there, right? But there would be frequent marches, of course, which I believe a band should concentrate on in providing encores. And the other criticism I would have, which I thought he did unnecessarily so, was non-stop playing at the White House. Again, he felt that there should never be a cessation of the music during a dinner. And so at the conclusion, or near the conclusion of one number, the word would be passed back again throughout the sections, such and such a title. So again, the inside man would be fishing out the upcoming encore while the current number was being played. It was non-stop, absolutely non-stop. And I stopped that practice. I think Salomon did too, in fact, before I took over the orchestra. Get a breathing spell once in a while. I think the guests appreciated it most of all, too. He seemed to be a little bit uneasy, that a little inferiority complex, maybe, that the music had to go on and on and on and on. So, Brian.
The radio broadcast.
Yes.
Did he also? He's credited with starting that.
I would presume so.
And popularizing the orchestra on the radio.
Right, but we played very few orchestral concerts on the radio.
It was mostly band.
Mostly band. Now, I do remember he was so impressed with the way I played the Paganini Concerto on that Wednesday night. There was, on the following scheduled band concert, he wanted me to play that, Paganini again. The whole program would have been orchestra, naturally. But an engagement came up down near the Watergate to dedicate the statue of, I think, William Jennings Bryan on that scheduled broadcast day. And that wiped out the programming of playing the orchestra, see. And now I think William Jennings Bryan's been hauled away to some attic or basement in some government building. It was a cold, very wintry days, I remember, even though it was April. And I thought, this is a far cry from standing up and playing the Paganini Concerto. I stood there with the saxophone, half freezing.
Did he ever share any of his ideas with you or any of the other members about why he felt the radio was important and why he was taking advantage of it? Because he was a pioneer in that.
Yes, he was. No, he never did. All I know about those radio broadcasts, the origins of them, was what I read here in the Marine Band Histories. Okay. I think they started broadcasting across the river somewhere, did they not?
Yes, sir, in Anacostia.
In Anacostia. Okay, right. But no, they were well established when I came here. I remember that it was called the Shutter-Nar, and they were 1 hour long, too. And nothing was tape recorded, of course. Those were live broadcasts. Sometimes the timing came down to a crunch near the end of the program, you know. There were a lot of second endings being held up, because I think we often had to finish with the Star-Spangled Banner. So you had to be live and on your toes and kind of cut the corners on the timings.
Now, did he have to watch the timings on his own, or was someone there to signal him?
I think mainly he did it on his own. The librarian would sit down there playing. There were very few non-playing members in the band. In fact, there were none, as I remember. So the librarian was one of the saxophonists, and maybe he would hold up to something of the watch, and they had this large-faced clock, which would spin inexorably. And so that was up to the director then. And later on, of course, I had a librarian, I think two sitting down at the table and kind of timing things and then holding up a suggestion. Second ending, stretch it out a little more, slow down, as we approached that. I mean, I enjoyed all that. It kept you flexible. We made up a timesheet more meticulously, I think, later on than Branson did, because he ran into some trouble sometimes. So you're getting over.
So he would have a rehearsal the day before, but he didn't time things?
Oh, yes, you had to time things, right. But nevertheless, there's always seemed to be a little unease about it, because you knew that you were on live. In other words, on tape, you could always make amends, but not back in those days. You couldn't do it.
Could you tell me what a rehearsal would have been like with him?
Yes. It's quite demanding, number one. Harshly critical at times, I would say. And it would seem to me that when you start out a number during the first rehearsal, you get so far and then something wouldn't please and stop right there. Iron that problem out. Then you go on to the next danger point and stop again. Whereas I always felt the proper method of doing things, of course, you could raise your eyebrows if something went wrong and you're going through it. Go through it completely. And then go back and make the repairs. But it seemed to at least I wanted to give the orchestra, the band, a complete picture of what they were doing. Go from the beginning, go to the end. And then by themselves they would recognize the danger spots where it was going to need correcting. So I thought the complete picture was more necessary, and then go back and make all the repairs you wanted to do. It was sort of a start and go process.
But he always would stop at the bad parts.
Unless you were reading maybe a brand new work through, then you wanted to get to the end and he hadn't heard it even himself. He may read through it. But any of the older works, he would stop quickly before he got to the end.
Can you give me an example of his being harshly critical?
Of the people he didn't like, players he didn't like. Captain Branson took into account a great deal of the personalities of the men. Of course, being a smaller family in those days, 65-piece band or orchestra, he seemed to be onto a lot of the personal problems, divorces, alienations or something, and within the family. And he seemed to hold the bandsmen always responsible for whatever went wrong within this family. Now, I remember one time there was the first horn player, Theodore Hess. His wife became mentally unstable, and I think she wound up in one of the asylums here. Yet Branson seemed to blame it on poor Hess. And so, and of course, if you became divorced, you were pretty much on the blacklist.
Because he was Catholic.
He was Catholic, a strong believer in the family, right? And I knew many men who were in the doghouse just because they were divorced. And he had some problem with some drinkers in those days too. Because I say a lot of those men had been his contemporaries, and
Did he do anything about the drinking other than just disliking those people?
Well, he just kind of let them know that he disapproved it, but yes.
He would actually tell them.
He would tell them, and then maybe one or two. Well, I think one he did get rid of back in the late 30s, transferred him to another band.
Would he actually say things about divorce or
Yes.
problems in drinking or rehearsals?
Right. That's what I didn't like about that. Personalities did creep into it, and they were laid out. Although most people did know what everyone else was doing in the band and the family and so forth. But Branson did make a scene of it sometimes.
Would he tend to, if someone missed something or made a mistake, would he then blame that on the
Well, they could blame him for being out too late the night before or something, or you don't look good this morning, and things like that, And then you kind of keep an eagle eye on the to-be culprit, culprit to be.
Did he ever have occasion to do these kinds of things to you?
But he had some other pets.
But he did pick them.
Yeah. Let's see what else I can say. Well, but he had the interest of the band at heart. He was a very demanding man, as I say. He was meticulous about his own appearance, looked well in uniform, typical well-groomed officer. He expected his men to look that way. Although there are different sizes and shapes, I will say that. because some of the band came from, well, we had Foreign Born, for instance, and they became a little corpulent, and, but he demanded that the uniform be shining, the buttons shining, and, as I say, we had frequent inspections. They were on Saturday mornings, I remember that back then. Then we had to play for the entire barracks inspection. Every company would be falling out there in the field, and the commanding officer and this exec would start at the commandant's house, and we'd be back here toward the band end. We'd be the last to be reviewed. Play all the time, too, during those things. Some of the miserable repertoire from the A, B, C, and C book, you know, popular tones and whatnot. It sounded awful for a band. That is to my ears, anyway.
Did he ever try to impart his religion during a rehearsal?
No. He did ask me my religion the morning I was accepted.
Did it seem to concern him?
I don't know why he did. I've never asked anyone in my life. I guess I didn't resent it, though. Just told him I was Protestant, period. He didn't pursue it. And he was very kind to me, Branson was. His wife was very impressed with my playing as well. After I'd performed my initial appearance here, done my initial appearance with playing the concerto, he called me on Friday and asked if I would play at, I think it was the dedication of St. Catherine's Auditorium on East Capitol Street. I think he attended the church there. It was his church, and he went, there's a new auditorium opening right beside it. And I said, well, of course, if you have some smaller pieces you can play. I said, yes, I do have half a dozen smaller numbers, which I could whip up like that. I said, what about a pianist? So we'll give you the pianist from the Gridiron Club. George Wilson was his name, excellent pianist. He said, get down there a half hour early and just hit a spot here and there. George was a good sight reader. And he was. I played the variations on the theme of Tartini by Chrysler, and a few other things, part of a concerto, a slow movement. And Wilson sat right there and did a wonderful job of timing me. But his wife was, Branson's wife, Mrs. Branson, was there that night too, and they became quite fond of me. And I never saw them socially, except later in the fall, after I'd opened the season with the Group D minor, concerto number 2. He called me and said he had tickets for the National Symphony, which concert Ephraim Zimbalist would be the violin soloist, but during the Glasnost, would I like to attend with him and his wife? I said, well, yes, sir. I appreciate it very much. So I met them at their home, and we all went down to Constitution Hall, and I said, Branson, he was Zimbalist. It was very kind. Often he'd give me tickets to the Library of Congress, too. And I thought Mrs. Branson was the most charming woman. The last time I saw her was the day of my retirement. And unfortunately, I was not here when Captain Branson died. I was off on tour. What year did he die, Ron?
69.
69. And then he was about 89 years old.
Yes, sir.
I remember I wrote a note to the family regretting my absence, that I could not do the funeral. I was out somewhere, tour.
Did you feel that there was a reason for these tickets and taking you to the concerts? Was it educational?
Perhaps he thought, well, I told him that I was very fortunate in having lived in Rochester, and I heard so many of the great artists who performed at the Eastman Theater. I had an aunt who supplied me with the best seats in the house. I'd have Series A, Series B, and then the Rochester Philharmonic in the afternoons. I heard all the... I sat probably from here to the wall, from Heifetz, Chrysler, Elman, Zimbalist, Paderewski, Rachmaninoff, Toscanini, all the orchestras. I was always down front. My aunt thought it was a great education for me, and maybe Branson thought, well, this young fellow's heard all these great concerts, he'd like to go to some more down here. So I listened to a lot more chamber music here at the Library of Congress. That's the kind of tickets he gave me. Not tickets for more orchestra concerts like he took me to with Zimbalist playing, but the Library of Congress concerts, seems like.
Did he, do you remember any conversation you had with him the night that you went to the Zimbalist concert? Did he talk about anything in particular or seem to be pushing any topics on you?
He was extremely surprised when Hans Kindler ended the concert, which the final number being Romeo and Juliet of Tchaikovsky, which, as you know, just before those final crashing chords, Kindler stopped there. And Branson was rather aghast. I remember he laughed at that. They commented also how old Zimbalist looked, but after all, Zimbalist was only about 45 that afternoon. Oh my heavens, how he's aged, you know. They point out various members back there, actually, they're getting old back there too. Because one of the first trombonists was Robert Clark, who'd been a prominent soloist here on trombone for many, many years. Clark's getting old. I guess everybody's getting old except Branson, see. His comments are interesting, yes. But as when I served under him, I might say, well, only from spring of '34 until he came back from that '38 tour, and he became ill. I saw him only once more. I did just a play under him. That was at the Naval Hospital. He did conduct an afternoon concert there.
It's in
1939.
1950. Oh, no, this was...
Before he retired.
Before he retired, okay.
That's right. So he said, he got up there, he says, this is better than medicine. Enjoyed the conducting. Then he picked on a couple of fellows in the band even that afternoon. I think one of the older men back there, Jim Miller, came blurting in maybe a bar too soon. No, you got too much time in. Time to put in your papers. Get out. And then he picked on Harpham. He said, Harpham, I haven't seen your name in the papers recently. What are you doing on that trombone? Things like that. You know, he would prod. It was kind of laughable, but he enjoyed it thoroughly. Then the day before he had his ceremony down here, he called me to come to his house. And I went over there on 12th Street, where he lived, and he gave me all his orchestral music, the Modern Concertmaster series, all the solo violin works of the orchestra repertoire. And perhaps I was going to remain an orchestra player the rest of my life. He gave me those wonderful books, the Modern Concertmaster. He said, I expect great things of you someday. And that was it. I never saw him again. Well, I guess the time he came down here, as you mentioned, 1950, did a march. Right. He was upstairs in the library. I remember that, waiting for him to come down. And then Henry Weber would, I think, was the conductor that night, Sandlin being out of town. I don't think Sandlin would have invited him in the first place, but they didn't seem to hit it off. You know? So there was friction there. But I remember I went up to the band office and I asked Branson to come down at that time. Shook hands with him. I told him how well he looked and all that. And then maybe the final time I realized that Sandlin was in the Naval Hospital. He had a hernia operation. This was early 55, before I was going to become director. Although the news was out. This could be maybe April of 55. And Branson was there also for some ailments, a different form. So there was a rather unusual situation. Former director of the Marine Band, the outgoing present director, and the director-to-be, all three of us there at the one time. Luckily, I was only a visitor. That's the last time I talked with Branson.
Do you remember the conversation?
Well, he just wished me luck. That's about it. So I read the good news about you in the paper. And, I said, well, I have to thank you primarily. I wouldn't be here today if you hadn't taken me back in February 1934. And that's right, you know. Life was so chancy, and supposing Branson hadn't been here that morning, supposing the assistant director would come. Hard-headed, I mean, didn't even want to listen to me play because I was not a bandsman. Things like that could have happened. Fortunately, Branson was here and he appreciated my playing.
I understand that he would push people on solos.
Right.
Could you tell me about that and his motivation behind wanting people to always learn a new solo?
Well, that's the idea, especially for the younger men. He wanted them to keep improving themselves. Bring out a new solo. I want to see your name on the list, things like that. So we had a variety of soloists all through the summer. Most of them were good, but a young man could expect to be jumped on if he didn't have a solo ready at almost any time.
So all 65 men were expected to have
No, not all 65. No. I mean, some of the routine chair players, he didn't expect that.
Okay.
But a newer man had better be improving himself all the time. Branson also would... I would think, now, as we talked about, he was a great family man. He believed in the institution of marriage and all. But a young fellow had better not get married too soon after he joined the Marine Band. Branson thought, your instrument comes first. He always preached that. Be a slave to your instrument. I remember then also a good friend of mine, Robert D. Hart. You ever heard his name here? Cornet soloist. Well, D. Hart joined the band, I think, around 35, and he was a prominent soloist. 35 tour, there were no tours, it was 36, there was a tour then 37. And D. Hart was an afternoon soloist. Did very well. Played, I think, Carnival of Venice. Then he came back and married. I remember because I was best man. I went up to New London, Connecticut. And I don't think Branson was happy about that in the first place. So, more than married, he came back and Branson put him on some broadcast, played a solo. And I think D. Hart flubbed one or two. And Branson stopped the band and said, well, you see, that's what happens. These young fellows come in here, play about a year or so, they get married, buy high-powered automobiles, but he hardly bought Pontiac 6 before he got married. By high-powered automobiles, the instrument goes down the hill. And I think all through that, in fact, Branson was so displeased with D. Hart that didn't even take him on the 38 tour. Left him home.
Well, from what you're saying, he must have thought himself almost as a father figure.
Father figure and a czar-like figure.
You wanted total control?
Well, that's what I say. In those days, you had to ask permission of the commanding officer to marry also. Does that still go on? No.
You have to tell him.
Tell him, right? Well, but the young fellows had fear and trembling. Look, I stayed single all those years. I stayed here 6.5 years as a single man, so I stayed in his good graces. Sam was entirely the opposite. Sam, I think he approved. In fact, he told me a couple of times, why don't you settle down and get married? I remember I made some scoffing remarks about a contemporary of mine. I dropped into his wedding party, and I made some remarks about, well, I don't know what you get married and all that business. Sam said, well, we'd all feel better if you'd do it. So I was selling a few wild oats. But I remember also, this is the same chap, Fred Pfeiffer. He was one of the prominent violinists. He went up and told Branson he wanted to marry. Now, a lot of these fellows met these girls on these conventions we would play. Pfeiffer met his bride to be down in Jackson, Mississippi. Played there 5 days. He meets a girl, falls in love. Long time correspondence, and then marry about a year later, a year and a half later. I don't think Branson liked that in the first place. And I think someone else met his wife down there, too. So, anyway, it came time, but Pfeiffer said he was going to get married. He went and told Branson that at the end of 38. But the New Year's ceremony was coming up as well in front of the Commandant's house. Branson, of course, my entire band there. But Pfeiffer said, I'm getting married that final week, and I can't make it. Branson roared, went back to his chair. He can't make it. He pointed out to about 10 of us. He can't make it. Pfeiffer was back. He made it. That's how he was, tyrannical in a way. But I was amused by it all. It never applied to me. But I see this fellow's going down the chute, for a long time. After they married, they were in the spot. Barely in the spot.
You would just pick on them.
Yeah, right. Demand more of them. Yeah. Make them work harder. Put them on more lists. Ask them to play more solos. If they were capable of playing a solo.
Were you asked to play solos, or did you volunteer to?
Oh, I volunteered always. As I say, the first concerto he asked me to play after he heard me play, let's get the whole concerto. I said, fine. Because the season was running out. This was late April. I performed it. The season ended. So they got the concerto in time. I did. But then I volunteered to open the season in November. And, well, right away in summer of 34, we were playing down at the Pan American Building. International Broadcast Orchestra, from the gardens in the rear, and sometimes in the winter we would play inside, and he would suggest that I go down and find a solo from somewhere in South America, go down and look at their repertoire, and I'd be soloist at those concerts. I'd play something smaller with a harp, maybe. And when I did find something, pretty acrobatic scherzo, which I myself arranged for the band, and then we did play that with the band at one time. But he asked me to play at those concerts. I mean, those were his programs. They were out of the routine, but he wanted to show me off, I suppose, during those programs.
His training, from what I can see, consisted almost entirely, except for one person, Marine band. He took violin lessons from the Elder Saddleman.
Elder Saddleman, you're right.
He took clarinet lessons from a player here in the band. He took composition from here in the band.
Right.
Did you feel like his training, and then he also was in the public schools here in town, and joined the band at 17, so he had no conservatory, no college,
right.
Nothing except local and the Marine band. Did you feel like this was adequate for him? Do you feel like he went beyond his training, or do you feel like that he was revolved around the training?
I think he surpassed his training, I would say, because, as I say, his programs were ambitious. The orchestra programs were always planned with fine taste. It was a formal season. And we played the symphonic repertoire But he had to come down to a more pedestrian level. But nevertheless, he did sustain the programs with a major work here and there, and even on those band programs. They were tough programs. There was always a brilliant rhapsody at the end or something of that nature, a classical overture. He never shirked the responsibilities of the job as far as having had to study his programs. And he did that intensely, I know. It was quite a job. I mean, learning the orchestral repertoire. But I suppose starting young like he did here, as he did, he himself learned repertoire, listening and watching like we all do, eventually. I studied his baton technique and all that, and same as I did with Sandelman. And I mean, a player, if he's interested at all in getting up to that podium, has to look and see what the director's doing, compare it to what he may have studied in his own conducting books or watched some other conductor doing the same work. So you learn by comparison, observation. But I thought that everything he did was quite creditable, except his downbeat was a confusing thing.
Could you show me?
Well, he didn't, when it came down, you expect the tone to start there. No, it had to start when it was on the rebound.
And did he ask for that?
Yeah, that's what he wanted. Yeah, the beat is here, but it had to come up there. Because I remember I mentioned this fellow Dehart to me. First rehearsal he sat in, Bransky had the downbeat, Dehart came in. Branson stopped and said, well, yeah, I see, my boy, you don't know what it's all about. But the band seemed to be in that reflexive action, that delayed beat. So hard to overcome, too. Sandelman, I think, overcame it all right, but under Branson, I don't know why it had to be that way. The stick had to come down, and there was the tone. It was very confusing. And every new man who came in made that same mistake, played on the beat. It made, I don't know, sort of a delayed sound, a delayed reaction.
Did he ever, what other interesting things did you notice about his conducting?
Well, I don't recall him doing very much from memory ever, to tell you that. His nose was always in the scores. Maybe he didn't have time to memorize, I don't know. But his eyes were frequently in the score, and if he did make a mistake, often he would point to himself right during the concert. He was to blame for it. But then if someone else made a mistake, then they could, he let them know that they were the culprits too. I remember one time he would take out his idiosyncrasies on some of the older men in the band. He caught one of the French horn players, and this fellow Jim Miller, whom I told you he said you should put in his papers. Well, I think one of the French horn players, two of them, were sitting near the string basses. Miller was playing string bass. He had a little bit too much to drink, I think. Red face, perspiring profusely. Branson glaring at him all through the final number. And these two horn players, an older man named O'Neill, and there was Schumann, a younger man. They were trying to restrain their laughter. So Branson caught them too, laughing at Miller and the way he was looking at Miller. So what he made them do, the following Saturday morning, he made them come into the band hall, all shined up and dressed blues, and sit there in two chairs and listen to Miller play those passages again with the string bass, and Branson sitting down up in the balcony, glaring over there and just waiting for one quirk of a smile. But that's the way he was. Childish things in a way. And they came out of that thing to try to hold those laughs back. Of course, Miller was dead sober then, too, and he did a lot better. But Branson would do things like that.
I know you mentioned when you were talking to Frank that you studied your scores and learned your scores at the piano. Do you know how Captain Branson would learn new scores that he didn't know?
I don't know. Maybe just mentally. He didn't play the piano as far as I know, nor did Sandelman play any piano. But now Sandelman, as we know, went to New Ealand Conservatory in Boston. So he may have had some required piano up there.
Did he seem to know a new score when he came to the band with it, or was he learning it as you played through it?
No, I think that a great deal of it had to progressively be learned.
So he would be sight reading at the same time you
Yeah, it seemed to be that way. Maybe he looked over a danger spot here and there, but he was not familiar with it. And which is one way to learn, I suppose, in those days, because if a man was not a pianist, he had a more difficult time, naturally. Fortunately, I began to study the violin in 1920, and then by 1927, my violin teacher said, now look, there's a lot more to the music world than playing the violin. You know, there's a lot more to this concerto you're playing. What's behind it all? So in 27, I was given piano lessons, and I studied piano from until 31, which was a great help to me. I enjoyed it too, and it came so fast. It was much easier than the violin, because I had left hand was pretty well developed anyway. Of course, it's a different technique. But I enjoyed the piano, and I enjoyed learning the rest of my concertos and solo works. As I bragged, I guess, to Frank the last time I was down here, I was sought after as an accompanist by my fellow violinists when they played in the Eastman School of Music and recital.
That's quite a compliment.
Yeah, I could play the backgrounds of Lalo Symphony, Espanol, Mendelssohn Concerto, things like that, Group Concerto, because I enjoyed digging in to see what was going on. As far as the piano went, I progressed as far as the Mendelssohn G minor concerto myself. Then after 31, I just figured that why learn any more about the piano? So, but I should have continued it, I suppose. Now I'm terribly rusty. It's with the piano.